Almost. Exactly. It's 7:30. Order the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverwoods. Would you please stand with me and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ford,
Present.
Clayton,
Here.
Trustee Eastman,
Here.
Trustee Raff, Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Trevino,
Here.
and Trustee Jamerson is absent, but we have a quorum.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First item of business is approval of the consent agenda. As we've stated before, all items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a trustee so requests. In that event, the discussion will be the first item of business after the approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to have anything? Okay. May I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second, please? Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
Trustee Raff,
Aye.
Trustee Smith,
Aye.
and Trustee Trevino.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. First item of business is our Finance Director's report. Director Vasquez, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items for the report tonight. First, our Finance Committee met earlier today. Among the topics we discussed were the transition to Wintrust Bank, kicking off the utility rate analysis that was recently approved, and the timeline for the budget cycle for the 2027 budget. Earlier this month, I finished providing our sustainability consultant with the documents she requested to help her work so she can make recommendations on how we can move forward to accomplish our sustainability goals. Our accounting manager, Jamise Scott, recently attended the National GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association conference. This year, the national conference happened to be in Chicago, so she was able to take advantage of being able to attend without having travel being involved. I'd like to ask Jamise if you could maybe give us a few highlights or takeaways from things you learned and took away from the conference.
Thank you, Tony. If some of you may not be aware, but GFOA is a Government Finance Officer Association. It's a professional association for government finance officers in municipalities. What they do is they provide tools and resources and training to make sure that we're managing the resident funds correctly. So this year was, as Tony said, I was able to go to the Chicago national training seminar. And there are some few takeaways that I received while I was there. One of the things that I wanted us to look into is the resources as far as grants are concerned. I think that we can expand our grant program if we just look into some vendors that can possibly help us get some support. We can get resources in locating more grants that better suits our needs, as our village is a little different than other cities or other municipalities. And we're able to track our grants more efficiently and possibly get a better outcome for our grant program. The other thing that they provided a resource for, I know that you all are aware, we're going to go out for the Certificate of Excellence GFOA Award. I want to add on to that, I want to also go after the budget award. They did do some changes to the criteria that they're measuring, so I think that we can attain that possibly next year. So I won't go into detail on how, but hopefully we can get there. And another thing that we're going to do is pay more close attention to the GASB pronouncements that they provide so that we can prepare and be more diligent about being compliant with state and federal regulations moving forward. So just a few things that I learned there. So hopefully we'll make some changes and possibly present in the future.
Thank you.
All right, then moving on, I was recently contacted by the state about a motor fuel tax audit that they are conducting. The MFT audits usually go back several years. So right now, Jamise and I are in the process of gathering the data they requested. I've started to provide 1898, the Burns McDonnell company that's doing the analysis for the utilities, with the documents that they need to proceed with the, getting the project kicked off. So I'll keep the board informed on the progress and the timeline as we move along. And then finally, for the second quarter financial report tonight, I'm going to ask our county manager, Jamise, to lead us through the report. Jamise is the main reason why we have revised the reports, and I think that we've been able to make them easier to read and follow along with. She's doing great work in our department, and this seemed like a good opportunity to have her present tonight. So, Jamise, if you could lead us through the financial report. I believe it is in the board packet on page
31.
31, 32, if anyone wants to follow along. All right, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Presented tonight are the unaudited financials for the second quarter of 2026. We're going to start with our revenue and expense activity by fund. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to a safe location. Looking at the revenues, we're going to begin with the general fund. As you can see, we're trending right on target for the year. We're at 50% of budgeted revenue. We're at the halfway point. June 30th is our halfway point for our fiscal year. And I just want to note a portion of that revenue contains home rule taxes, municipal sales taxes, state income tax, and gas utility taxes, which is 75% of that revenue. We increased the budget this year, both for home rule and municipal sales tax, and they're currently exceeding 63% of the budget at this point in the year. As far as the general fund expenses, we're halfway through the year and we're at 43%, which is what we're going to see at this point. So we budget conservatively to help plan for possible needs throughout the year, so it's expected to trend below 50%. Just to give you an example, one of the line items on the expenses is for professional services. We budget for $200,000 for the year. Right now, we're currently only at $21,000. But again, that line could see a variance because we do contract out additional HR support, or as you guys know, our sustainability consultant. So you may see more expenses come throughout the remainder of the year for that line item. So overall, the general fund is now showing a $258,000 surplus at the end of the second quarter. This is opposed to the $384,000 deficit at the end of the first quarter that was noted back in April. Again, the largest factors for this surplus are the sales tax and state income tax performances, as well as the property tax activity, which we do not receive those funds in the first quarter. For the capital fund, you do not see any revenue as of quarter two because that fund is based on grant money related to the Saunders Road STP project. The state had delayed awarding the vendor for that project, so the work has not yet begun. So we will not see that revenue in quarter two. Again, the expenditures are only 2% of the annual budgeted amount. Most of the budget expenses are related to the Saunders Road project, so that has not started. It should be noted that we budget a high expenditure scenario for our capital fund. However, most of the projects have not been have not been started for 2026. So we can look at quarter three to see if there's any activity. For the motor fuel tax, our motor fuel tax revenues are trending right on target at 52% through the second quarter. Currently, expenditures are at 0% for the year. However, we have a large MFT expenditure that we're projecting for anticipated work for the Saunders Road project later this year, so you will possibly see that in quarter 3 or quarter 4. For our enterprise funds, I'll start with the water fund. Revenues are at 28% of the annual budgeted amount as of quarter 2. At this point last year, the water revenue fund was only 35%, and we did still finish at 105% toward the end of the year. This can be attributed to warmer months bring more water usage. So because we only bill residents quarterly, we should see that number trend up by the time we bring the third quarter financials. Another thing to note, we have not yet received the $200,000 in grant funds that the state awarded us this year. So if we had received those funds, it would be at 39% budgeted revenue. We'll see if we receive that in quarter 3 or quarter 4 this year, later this year. Expenditures are at 12%. Again, it should be noted a significant part of the water expense comes from purchasing water from Northbrook, and those monthly charges tend to spike through July and October. Again, the summer months have more water usage. We will have a large part of that expense budget tied to large capital expenditures as well, which has not happened this year yet. So just to give you a rundown of some of those projects, $330,000 was reserved for the reservoir rehab project, $503,000 for the Deerfield Road water main relocation, and $500,000 for the potential replacement of work at Thorngate. Again, just a reminder, with the recent approval of the water rate analysis, we will have a longer-term plan to ensure our revenue for water rates is in line to meet our future infrastructure needs. Our sewer fund is a little different from our water. Our revenues are on target at 48% of the budgeted amount for the year. However, expenditures are low at this point, at only 5% of what we budgeted. Much of that is capital project work related to the sewer fund that will happen later this year. In particular, it's going to be the modernization of the 3 lift stations, which the board recently approved in the county to start working on. However, the sewer funds remain in a position exceeding the fund balance for target. The sewer rate analysis will review our 10-year plans for sewer infrastructure projects to help us determine if the fund balance we have is appropriate for our long-term needs. If you want to go to the next page, we're going to review our general fund activity by department. Overall, the budgeted department revenues are near anticipated levels for halfway through the year. If you can see, administration, building, police, road and bridge are ranging from 42% through 55%, which is aligned with our target. The woodland management is behind at 34%, but that can vary since the revenue sources come from permits and ecological consults. Expenditures in the administration department halfway through the year are at 32% of budget. However, as I noted before, we budget conservatively to help plan for possible needs throughout the year, so it's expected that we're trending below 50%. The next page is our cash investment summary. The main item to note in the cash report is that we are approximately $224,000 above where we started in the beginning of the year. As we've noted a few times earlier in this report, many of the capital projects which were expected to impact our cash standing have not yet happened at this point in the year. So we are well above our projected year-end balance, but that will change throughout the year. And then if you look at the pie chart illustrated on the bottom of the page, it gives you an indication of which funds hold the most cash and investment balance. The vast majority is tied to the general and capital project funds, with about a third tied to the enterprise funds. However, once the Sanders Road STP project starts seeing expenses, the MFT fund will be more in line with what we expect. That is my overview of the Q2 financials.
Are there any questions for our accounting manager? Comments? Great job. Great job. Very succinct. Thank you. Is there any further information from our director?
No, that's the end of our report.
Okay. Are there any questions for our director? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And again, thank you for the good work. Next item of business is our treasurer's report. Our treasurer is with us this evening.
Just what you want, more numbers.
Well, we get them over with early.
The activity's been pretty stable. Interest rates have been pretty stable, not tremendous change. You all see the headlines of interest rates kind of follow a few very key economic reports, price of gas, chance of war, all those factors, but they're hovering, in the high threes. Our portfolio, right now under management, the rest of the funds are available in cash. And based on the projections of the end of the year, we may keep those funds available because we'll have about $12.5 million under management. And if you're projecting a $13 million year-end balance, we might keep these the way they are and leave the cash there rather than moving some of the excess cash into investment depending on timing. The portfolio has done very well. We're probably a duration of close to 2 years in our investments. For those familiar with the policy investment, there are those not so much. It's very narrow focus on what we invest, and our time frame is very short term. We don't go out many years, and we don't invest in risky. Everything is pretty much back guaranteed and highly rated. I think our lowest rating might be AA. We have the portfolio right now spread between CDs, corporate paper, corporate bonds, municipalities, and federal government agencies. The overall yield on the investment portfolio is around 3.8%. I've been working with our JP Morgan team to invest any idle cash that we have. We're still targeting the investment of about $2 million into investments, but we're kind of stepped back from putting that to work, thinking rates might have a slight blip in the next few weeks or months. The duration this year, a lot of maturities came due earlier. We only have one maturity that is expiring at the end of October. The rest of our investments start maturing in 27, and our goal is always to ladder these investments so we always have something coming up and taking advantage of pretty much averaging interest rates, which have been a lot better than they used to be, but flat in recent times. We have a few of our investments that are actually over 4.25%. The cash flow on these is anticipated to be around $370,000. As of now, we're going to reinvest this money as it comes mature rather than transferring it over. That's always a capability. And now we'll just make sure that the linkage between Wintrust and the investment account is established too. As easy as actually, it wasn't as easy as you would have thought with our bank accounts being at Chase and the investments there. It was still a process, but it shouldn't be any problem to hook it up to the Wintrust account. We can move money over whenever we need it, if we need it. Let's see what else I've highlighted here. The ratings. We did get into some municipalities, which were actually nice investments. Very, very tentative in going in heavily into that, but a lot of them were offered at substantial discounts to par. So we have yields of over 4% on some of the municipalities that we got into, which is, for taxable investors, that's wonderful. We don't really care, but it's still nice to get the yield if they're offered at a discount and the ratings are strong. So we've basically got a plan outlined, and I'm in touch with Danielle and the JP Morgan team pretty much a couple times a week to go over the pending securities, and I'll talk with Tony and the team to make sure that for your budget you have what you need if you need anything from here. Otherwise, we'll continue to work with this portfolio and hopefully make sure we stay in that 3.7 to 4% range.
Are there any questions for our treasurer? Thank you very much. Good to see you. Moving on, our Director of Community Services is not with us tonight. I think that, I don't think I was supposed to say anything here. Let's make sure. No, actually hazardous trees. He wanted me to to inform the board that the hazardous trees project, or the compliance with the hazardous trees ordinance, is in process. The notices have been sent out to people and we've been getting some responses, challenges about this isn't my tree or whatever, and contracting has been started. And compliance is due by mid-September. So again, people have been noticed and the second notices have gone out. And as we gather, as we gather more responses, we'll send our forester out again to make sure that either the trees have been taken down or we have some notice that they have been contracted to be removed. So yes.
Question, these are trees on private land?
They're trees on private land that have been deemed hazardous. They're dead, and if they fall, they would create a hazard, public hazard. So, are there any other questions? I'm sure and Saunders Road, of course, but he will give you a full and detailed report when he's with us at the next meeting. So moving forward, attorney's report, please.
I received another red line from Verizon on the lease for the water tower. We're down to 2 comments, differences. I sent back my suggested compromise language yesterday. I can get things turned around pretty quickly. Verizon has a different process, so unfortunately, even these small little changes take a while, but I think we're very near reaching an agreement. On Quick Trip, we have a meeting, I think tomorrow, is it? With the Lake County Forest Preserve to explore bringing water over underneath the river through the Forest Preserve. We also have continued to try and have discussions with Buffalo Grove on possibly having a water interconnect with Buffalo Grove. So we continue to explore both options. And I think everything else I have is pretty much on the agenda. If our director was here, if Steve was here, he probably would say that we have received permit drawings for the work on the Federal Life property for the work that the village would be performing. The permit drawings have been submitted to the IEPA, I think, or SMC, or both, for whatever permit approvals they have to give before we can actually go out to award the work. We're getting an opinion of probable cost for what that work will be. And just to remind the board, we're also going to be entering into an agreement with Christopher Burke Engineering to do project management for us. If you recall, we had a different firm provide project management when we demolished the old Federal Life Insurance office building, because in order to manage that project, you need somebody there with the capability to keep a track on the contractor and all that stuff. With the work that we're doing to create the new detention basin on the Federal Life site, we thought about the alternatives. One was to go back to W.B. Olson, which was the firm that we had used on the demolition project. But the most sensible alternative that leapt at us was to ask Christopher Burke if they could manage it, because they're managing the county part of the work. And the two parts are occurring on the same property. So basically, this became just an easy way of ensuring that there would be the best degree of coordination between the two halves. And as I said to the county, essentially, as we perform this work for the North Detention, we are almost acting as the county's agents. The permit drawings have to be approved by the county. The form of the bid documents will be prepared using a format and template that IDOT will find acceptable, since all this work eventually has to be reimbursed. And the county has said to us that they'll work with us as we incur expenses for this work. They can reimburse us, at a periodic basis, might be monthly if we pay the contractor that way, if we end up doing 2 or 3 installments. So we are working with the county so that as we get ready to let the contract, it will come before the board at some point in the next couple of meetings, hopefully, that there is a process in place for us to have the work performed, but to also to be reimbursed for it by the county under our intergovernmental agreement. So that's part of the coordination that we've been working on. That's to come. We don't have those agreements. We haven't gone out to bid yet, but we're working on getting to that point. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for our attorney? Thank you. Police report, Chief.
Yes, I was on vacation last week and did not prepare an activity report in the board packet. Note, we did send an officer to Highland Park yesterday for mutual aid when they had a shooting in their town. So they did call out for assistance, and we sent an officer. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chief, please? Thank you, and thank you for your service. Plan Commission report, Chair Brightcove.
Good evening. The Plan Commission held a public hearing on July 9th to consider adoption of a text amendment to the village zoning ordinance to add definitions, including for a destination spa, and to amend provisions of the Office and Research 1 district to add a destination spa as a special use. The Plan Commission voted to recommend these amendments to the board. On August 20th, the Plan Commission will hold a hearing on a destination spa special use application by Pomeroy for its Nordic Spa development on the Walters Kluwer property. And that's it.
Are there any questions for our chair? Thank you, and good luck. Zoning Board of Appeals did not meet. Fire District report. Chief Kruger isn't with us this evening. Village Ecologist report. Mr. Zimmerman, good to see you. State of the woods.
Yeah, this is fine. If you can get it full screen, it would be better, but if you can't, that's fine. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm the village ecologist. For those of you that don't know me, I think everyone does. I come basically once a year to kind of give the state of the woodlands address to everyone. And so this is a shorter version of an hour-long presentation that we'll give at a different time. And so I'll try to be concise here. You can go to the next slide. So I don't know, there's always new people on the board and new faces. So I'm going to give a little bit of background about what I've kind of been doing here for the last 10 years. So the first year I started, basically, we mapped all of the different woodland communities and their quality within the entire village. So that's what you're seeing up here is this map on the right, or in your packets that you're looking at. But essentially, there's like 5 different communities. There's floodplain along the river, and then working out to essentially to the east as the elevation rises, you get different communities dominated by different species. I won't go into all the details, but know that, yeah, it essentially goes from floodplain to mesic woodland to dry mesic and out to what would have been prairie historically. And that's what you're seeing on the map. The most unique community, I always bring this up, is the green on the map. And you can see it's kind of spattered all over the map. Those are in northern flatwoods, or what are called ephemeral ponds or pools. And those are the areas, as we know in the village, that these pockets that are wet in the spring and then they dry out in the summer. And to answer, there were a series of questions that were given me to answer throughout this presentation. So what communities are at the most risk? To me, it's this northern flatwoods community. Again, because a lot of times when I meet with residents, they just don't want to see water on their property, even though water's been collecting in these areas for quite literally hundreds of years, and there's 100-year-old oak trees growing in this water is evidence of that. But essentially, it's kind of the draining of those communities. And then I would say second to that is the purplish areas on the map, especially in the southern half of the village, mostly because of invasive shrubs, that being buckthorn, and more recently in the last 5 years, ash saplings. Next slide. So back in 2017, about a year or so after I started here, we realized that we had this really unique woodland protection ordinance that was in place, but we didn't know where the protected woodlands actually were. So we flew the village with at that time, a plane. We use a drone these days. I'll talk about that. And took some special imaging that we ran into a geographic information system program. And basically, we were able to spit out these. So in the center there, that is an example. So every single parcel in the village has a map that delineates in yellow where the protected woodlands are located. So when people come in to do certain things, which I'll talk about, we go back to these maps. They're not perfect. Sometimes I have to make slight adjustments, as you can imagine, but they're pretty good for using to enforce the ordinance. I will mention, so there have been whispers over maybe the past year or so. So this woodland delineation is approaching 10 years old. There's been talk of, a 10-year update potentially. I can tell you that I was at the Society for Ecological Restoration conference in Milwaukee last week, and there's some really cool stuff going on with drones now to do this. And I'm talking drones that are like almost the size of a car that can stay up in the air for like 6 hours to do this kind of mapping now. And then there's AI programs built into it. Some cool stuff that could be explored if we ever wanted to update this. Next slide. Okay, so as everyone probably knows, the village has several lots that they own, totaling 35 acres. You got the Chianti lots across the street here, the Village Hall here, the Rivenburg parcel, and Woodland Preserve at the police station. There was a 10-year restoration and stewardship maintenance, I call it stewardship plan, that was put into place in 2018. And last year was year 7 of that plan. We have Native Restoration Services hired for this year. You likely won't see them out probably till in the fall into early winter, because I want them to concentrate on invasive shrubs, and that's the best time to do it. Next year, and this goes out on an annual basis, by the way, this contract, next year is a burn year. So every 3 years, all of the sites get a controlled burn. Next year is the next year for that, which will be, so it'll be, the contract will be more, but that's really what cleans the sites. And as you've seen, the sites that get burned just look fantastic. Next slide. So just a little bit about the tree and woodland ordinance that was updated in 2018. It was combined with the tree ordinance. So now it's the tree and woodland protection ordinance. It essentially says that now we have those woodland maps. A resident is not able or cannot remove more than 20% of the woodlands on a parcel to, let's say, do an addition or create turf grass for lawn, that kind of thing. We deal with that a lot. The tree survey requirements were also changed. So most municipalities, their tree ordinances cover trees 6 inches and greater, like related to mitigation and those kind of things. In Riverwoods, though, we have true woodlands and we have a shrub layer. And those shrubs are often 2 inches to 6 inches. So those are now included to make sure we capture that native shrub layer of the woodlands and that doesn't get cleared without potential penalty. Probably don't have to go. Just the last bullet point I will mention, another really unique thing about Riverwoods is that essentially there are too many trees. We won't go into that, but those that talk to me know like there's an overabundance of trees actually to the point where shade becomes a problem and things growing. When a resident owes money as part of mitigation, if it's over $5,000, they are allowed to use their mitigation money on their own property to do ecological restoration. So rather than just writing a check to the village, they can use, let's say, a $5,000 mitigation fee. I go out and meet with them and say, you know, you need to thin buckthorn, you could do a controlled burn, and they can use their mitigation money on their own property in the woodlands. That's really unique. Nobody does that. Next slide. So this is something new that I haven't brought up, but I get asked a lot. Like when these developments come in, how come they do this? How come that? Are we protecting the trees? So I can tell you, me and Bruce, remember going through all this, Bruce, for a couple of years, is now it's required for any development that comes in, there's a plan set, right, that the contractor has to follow. One of the sheets is specifically addresses the wetlands, the woodlands, and the trees. So basically, I took a clip out of a plan set, and this is what I personally review related to every at least significant development that comes in. We don't do this for like decks and things like that or patios, but any kind of significant development is this plan sheet has to be submitted. It has everything I need to review related to the tree and woodland ordinance. To capture all the trees are being removed, tracking what mitigations required, making sure the 20% rule isn't, it doesn't go past that. So we have a table that includes all these things, but I wanted to show, and then here's a really good example. So when this house went in, it's one of the better examples I've ever seen where a chain link fence is essentially put up on the edge of the woodland to keep the contractors out of the woodland. You can see the fencing, that's the tree protection. You can see the mulch that protects the root zones. All this stuff has to be in place then before the development can start. But I thought I would share that, yeah, for every development, I get a call from Steve saying, hey, you know, can you review the woodland information? So next slide. The cost share programs. Most people know about these. I'll go through them quickly because I have another slide after this. The map on the right, it's a little hard to read up there. So this is through 2025, and it shows every parcel that I've actually done an ecological consultant with a resident. It's over 400, and the different colors for the year they were done. So I'd like to do more. I'd like to do like more than 40 a year, but you know, it's still pretty good. You can see how much coverage there is on this map. And maybe this is an opportunity to get some of the people that haven't done it. Maybe we can send letters to them and offer a free consultation or something. Just some ideas I'm thinking about to fill in the gaps here where people have not had consults. Essentially, when I do these consults, the resident is given their own little ecological restoration plan that they can then use to apply for the cost share programs that are listed here and get reimbursed. Next slide. So back to the numbers. I show this one every year. It's getting bigger by the year. So the top table there outlines from when I started, so 2016 through the end of 2025. All the cost share programs on the left and the number of applications for each one. And you can see, you know, which ones stand out. The invasive shrub removal is used a lot, the tree thinning, the seeding. And if you look then at the bottom table, that's a little more representative of the money the village has spent using the programs. So Again, you can see the invasive shrub removal program in the middle there on the far right outside of the table. The average that the village reimburses per year is about $21,000 over the 10 years. Second to that looks like, I thought it was the eighth. Yeah, the native seeding. So the reason the native seeding one is second is generally I tell a resident, okay, you're going to clear all this buckthorn, and usually there's nothing growing on the ground layer. So the second thing they do is then seed it. So that's why that's kind of the second highest one, because I always highly recommend the seeding happen after the buckthorn removal. I won't go into more of these unless there's questions at the end, but I will say, so in the very bottom right portion, 54,000. So that is the average total spent per year by the village over the 10 years. So it's averaging about 54,000 that the village reimburses. Next slide. So I drove around this spring. This is a preparation for the larger presentation that we might give someday. And I drove to probably 50 or 60 lots that I know have done the ecological restoration through the cost share program and took pictures. They're hard to see here, but these are some of the better ones. So the people that have done this and have kept up with the maintenance, they still look good. The lots that haven't done anything continue to degrade. But yeah, I probably have over 100 pictures of lots and the work that was done. Next slide. So there was a question about green infrastructure. So back in 2015, if you remember that map with all the colors of the different communities, there was a second part of that report where we did a green infrastructure analysis. And I write watershed plans, and so I applied the same methodology to this. And what we did is the map on the left with the brown and yellow colors. Every parcel is on its own, and we had about 10 criteria that are listed in the little table that you don't have to read. But essentially it was, is the parcel, and does it have a wetland? Is it next to a stream? Is it next to a forest preserve? Is it high quality? For every one that it met, it got a point. So the darker brown met more of the green infrastructure points, and the yellows less. And then we did like a breakdown, a statistical thing where we threw out all the parcels that were essentially lower quality for green infrastructure, and you end up with that map on the right. I can tell you that this map is not like most communities. Most communities I do this for have this clean green infrastructure network along the streams and rivers. Because Riverwoods is all wooded, essentially most of the, say the whole western portion and southern-ish portion is all green infrastructure. So there really is no linking green infrastructure like you see in most communities. So it's kind of a result, but a good result. It's all green infrastructure. Next. Yeah, so this is my last slide. So some of the most important issues, and I put climate change up there. So for the longest time, I didn't really want to believe in it until about 5 years ago when all the oaks started dying. That's related to climate change. I'm the one that reviews the tree removal permits. 2020, all of a sudden, all these oak trees started showing up, and not related to development, just trees were dying in the middle of August. Next year, it got so bad, the forest preserves met. We actually came here and we went to all the forest preserves, and they thought it was oak wilt, which is devastating. That literally just devastates woodlands. But I was noticing, along with Evan Shore, who works with Bartlett Tree Company, and I work with him quite a bit, we were seeing something different where the swamp white oaks specifically were doing pretty good. And so he agreed to take samples of a bunch of trees in the village and get them tested. Came back as riprap. Wetter springs, so from I think 2020, 21, I think maybe 2019 were the wettest springs on record. The white oak, bur oak, that like it a little higher and drier, couldn't tolerate the wetness in the spring and got riprap, which then makes the tree weak. And then you get these long drought periods like we had where it doesn't rain for a month. And all of a sudden, that top right picture I'm showing you there, it's an example how it's weird. It's like in the middle of August, all the leaves just turn brown on the tree. And people tell me it's like I woke up one morning and the tree was brown. And that's because the tree's root system can't send up the nutrients. And there's other species than the oaks, but it's related to climate change. I can tell you recently, because I review again probably 150 tree removal permits a year, has declined significantly in the last 2 years, and that's because I think in that little 3-year window, the trees that were essentially going to die died. And now I think it's people just picking away other dead trees, but it has significantly stopped. And I will say I'm seeing this throughout the Midwest. It's not just a Northern Illinois thing. It's the whole Midwest. The second bullet point, draining the Northern Flatwoods. So I mentioned that already. That just continues to be an issue. At least 50% of the lots I visit have little channels dug out to the ditches that drain these really high quality wetland areas. And again, people just tell me, one, they think it's going to kill the trees. That I have to point out that there's a 150-year-old swamp white oak growing in the water. They think that's bad, and I have to tell them that that tree's been there for that long. It obviously needs that water. So it's kind of how I sell it. The third bullet point up there, invasive species are still a problem. The buckthorn, especially over kind of in, I would say east of Portline in the southern half, is pretty significant. And then related to the climate change in the last 5 years, what I've seen is ash trees, which the emerald ash borer essentially decimated over the last 20 years. These wetter springs, green ash specifically likes wettish conditions. And I'm seeing it popping up almost like buckthorn in the last few years. So it's kind of we got two invaders now, and then just the human intervention is part of all this, right? It's a fragmented ecosystem with many people trying to manage many lots, right? The 2 square mile area. And those are sort of the general ecological issues, which generally, except the climate change is a relatively new one. Everyone's always kind of been here. And what I try to work with residents on through the cost share program specifically. Hopefully I kept that concise enough.
There are questions? Trustee Clayton, please.
Steve, it looks like we're about 8 years into the 10-year program originally. Is it time to re-examine the plan? I mean, are all the parcels exactly where you want them? For example, the parcel west of Village Hall, that's where you think it should be, and it's still consistent with the 10-year plan, or
so
we update the 10-year?
Good question. So I walk the sites every year, and then remember that the contract for the stewardship goes out on an annual basis. So I make sure that what is in each annual plan addresses what I think the issues are. So it is kind of evolving. But in year 9 or 10, we'll talk about like another 10-year plan moving out. The good thing is the village lots are in really good condition, and that's what you want, right? You want them to be at a position where there's limited funds you have to put in just to maintain the status quo. I can tell you with all the dead oaks over here, and they're all red oaks, that's a result of that climate change thing, and Chianti Creek runs by there. And so that has flooded more often into that area, which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. It's just nature kind of adjusting to the situation. Every year, I think we plant a swamp white oak or 2 back there. And potentially, I don't want to speak too much to this, but maybe as part of the Deerfield Road program, there'll be some trees we can plant that we might be able to plant. Swamp white oaks and sycamores and some other things out there.
Is there any kind of special program that we could undertake that's targeted to the highest risk area in Northern Flatwoods? Is there anything beyond what we're doing now that we should be doing?
We can talk after, Mike, but Chris, if you remember, we met with Lake County SMC last year about maybe taking on a unique program to address that, where maybe some of these northern flatwoods are being drained. And even the one across the street, it has a ditch cut into it. Simply putting a plug in that little ditch that backs the water back up into the wetland, but modeled so it doesn't go on people's properties, right? And finding places like that in the village to sort of bring the hydrology back to them and help, keep the water on the land to reduce flooding.
So that's a program by the stormwater.
No, it's something we talked to them about because their ordinance is really strict on what you can and can't do with wetlands. And we wanted to make sure if we went down this road that they would not prohibit doing things like that, right? Because they're a flood control agency. and we're suggesting keeping more water in the land, right? Because that's what healthy ecosystems that would have done.
Obviously, there's many different elements to a woodland other than the trees. Is there anything else that we should be, animals?
Yes, the wildlife. So, I don't pay super close attention to a lot of that. I can tell you I'm an avid birder. I come to Riverwoods, especially Ryerson in May to birdwatch. And when I do consultations in May, which is when most people have me out, the bird population is exceptional. I mean, you can go out and see 100 species in a day. Red-headed woodpeckers, which used to be kind of rare in this area. There's at least 3 nesting pairs across the street in here that I noticed for the first time just a couple of years ago. So that's the one unique thing. The deer populations, I mean, the deer are the deer, right? I think Lake County still has their culling program that probably controls some of the deer activity in Riverwoods.
Turning back to the cost share programs for a minute, the slide you showed with regard to the effectiveness of the cost share program illustrates how effective they are on a particular property, because you could go back and look at it and see how the property's doing. But if you took the village as a whole and you were just to make a judgment as to whether our cost share programs have been effective in improving the overall health of the woodlands or not?
Great question. I would say they're definitely beneficial where multiple residents, and I'm thinking kind of, Chris, where, you've got your neighbors there that all do it, and you hire a contractor that burns all your lots together. When it's a little bit larger scale than just a lot here, and here, that's where you see the benefits. And that's why I recommended maybe some of those residents that haven't had a consult that are in those gaps. We can figure out how to get them on board.
So sort of a targeted marketing or PR program targeted to the people who would help complete the green infrastructure.
Something like, hey, we've got this program, you fit within this unique thing. Maybe, you get a free consult because we really want you to get involved in this kind of thing.
Okay.
Something like that. I don't know.
Thank you.
Any questions? Trustee Smith, please.
Thank you, Steve. I thought the information was really spectacular, so thanks a lot. But I just had kind of 2 basic questions. One builds on Trustee Clayton's question about both the cost share the cost share program. And you mentioned the idea of, targeted mailings, incentivizing certain residents or locations or properties to participate. Are there other elements of the cost share program, and not that I expect you to have answers, that you would consider or think that we should consider for modification, whether it be, different programs, more programs, whatever that might look like?
No, I can answer that because, so I think since their inception, we've updated them 3 times. The most recent was 2022, I believe. We added a program last year. So we took out the garlic remover. So it used to be like the buckthorn removal program. Well, that got changed to the invasive shrub removal program. The garlic mustard program got changed to the invasive plant removal program. So this is another thing to consider is I've been asked multiple times about, well, why don't we have a program for, let's say a person goes all in and spends 10 grand and restores their lot, the long-term stewardship. I have many, many reasons for, well, yes, that would be great. It would be very, very difficult to track multi-year contracts with people implementing stewardship. And we've explored it. I've actually have a draft of this program that I created when Cheryl Chamberlain was still here and I was working with her. So it's kind of just been sitting there. I can explore it again, but that's to answer your question about new programs. That's the one I hear about the most.
Yeah, I was going to say even new or just modifications. One resident said something to me about, I think it's lesser celandine, if I'm saying
That's
that
now
correctly.
part of the invasive plant removal. Yeah, I literally listed the species included in there, and that's now part of that.
Right. And so thank you. So I think that's something we should consider very diligently, especially as part of the sustainability plan of what if any modifications are appropriate, are appropriate. The other part of that, I was thinking about just once again, kind of modifications, updates, however you want to think about that word. What about like the tree and woodland ordinance program? It sounds like it was last updated, I think in 2018. Based on what you're seeing, climate change, based on what you're seeing about more ash, whatever those things might be, is it time to rethink or at least revisit the current tree woodland ordinance?
Yeah, probably. And Bruce and I would work together on that. I think I looked at it last maybe 3 or 4 years ago and wrote down some comments, and I've got it sort of sitting, waiting for the right time. Yeah, so as I implement things, of course, yeah, I noticed a lot of different things like, oh, that didn't work, that did, we should have done that. And I made notes of those things.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as I mentioned, Steve, just as part of, especially the work that your consultant's doing with the sustainability plan, maybe there's some ability to kind of pull those two things together to make sure that we're thinking about the climate holistically.
Yeah, and I will tell you the biggest change I'm making related to the climate is the species I'm recommending. I'm recommending more central Illinois stuff that isn't as common up here, like sycamore. Yeah, things that are here, but we're on the very northern range. And so kind of moving species shifts, if you will.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, I'd really like to see and hear more about that. Both of those things. Great, thank you.
Trustee Raff, please.
Thank you. You mentioned in your remarks something about mitigation. Can you briefly say when does mitigation need to be done, or when does it occur, and who's responsible for it?
Yes, so the village has a list of protected tree and shrub species, and when a development comes in and those get removed, we have a fee schedule, and it's per inch. So, if you have a big oak and it's like $200 an inch, that's the mitigation money that's owed it's for removal. And again, we've sometimes people just write a check to the village. Other times they're willing to do that mitigation plan where they have me out and they say, yeah, I want to spend my money on my own property.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Thank you. Next order of business, information items and comments from the president. Board retreat. We had talked at our prior meetings about a board retreat and having that sometime in October. After a couple more discussions, we thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to spend more time focused on the results of the community survey and not combine that with a budget discussion or other financial discussions. So moving forward with that, if the board agrees, what we'd like to do is have a committee of the whole meeting to receive the results of the community survey. The first committee of the whole meeting in October, but have that meeting start at 5 o'clock or so that we have sufficient time to receive the results and discuss them. And as we do that and we take those in, then we can be more ready to go into our budget discussions, which need to happen sometime in November, I think, because we have a tax levy that we need to consider for December. So things are getting moved around a little bit, and trying to bring those ideas together. The Finance Committee has been having some serious discussions about how that might happen and how we might best take up the board's time and get the most information and get the most out of our discussions. So at this point, if we could please consider starting our committee of the whole meeting in October, first meeting in October at, let's say 5 o'clock at this point. We'll have real food. So, you know, instead of the sandwiches. Anyway, we'll have real food so we can actually have more time to take that in. And from there, I think we will move on to the budget discussions, but we might have some things that we are talking about developing information for the board to consider prior to going into budget a meeting, so that you have time to think about that and we can finally bring those ideas together, what the community is interested in, what they think are important, and then how we're going to pay for that, how we're going to bring that all together. So instead of squishing it all into one big long meeting and maybe going too fast and not taking time for some of those ideas to gel, that's where we're at. So I just wanted to pass that along. The other thing I'd like to pass, well, I did talk about hazardous trees, didn't I? We've had some meetings recently. Representative Schneider had a meeting of the fire chiefs, then it was the mayors and village managers, and then it was the police chiefs. And so there's a lot of information sharing that goes on as a result of that. Not just what Representative Schneider is hearing and what he brings to the table, and naturally everybody's concerned about grants and infrastructure, but actually connecting with other municipalities. We've had some meetings with and conversations with Buffalo Grove, for example. You've heard we've reached out to them a couple of times, and we're talking about emergency water connections. We're talking about a water connection for Quick Trip and so forth. We've had meetings with Deerfield and communications with Deerfield about things like, gee, you know, what about a registered operator in charge, which is a water kind of related thing and duty. So there are conversations that we're having with our communities in the area that I don't believe we'd had before. We've got a continuing conversation going on with Lake County about a number of options. So again, reaching out, what you heard on the calendar is a Forest Preserve meeting. So we've got a lot of those meetings going on. The other thing that is coming are code revisions. We really need to take a look at our municipal code and make sure that it's blended that if there need to be revisions, just like we suggested was suggested that we take a look at the cost sharing, there are certain areas of the code that really need for us to take a look at. And that would be, you know, positions and roles. We talked about the Plan Commission and the ZBA consolidation. We've talked about that. So all those items are still on staff's list of things to do. And hopefully we are going to schedule some time where we can get into it very deeply so that we can bring something to the board to consider. So that's what's going on in our neck of the woods. Visitors wishing to address the board. Randy.
Hello, Randy Merrill, RPC. So also piggybacking on Steve's wonderful report. That's you, Steve. You know, we hear from residents who still have a concern about buckthorn, but yet they don't want to spend the money or feel that they're going to totally rip their yard naked by taking out all of the buckthorn. A lot of it gives them privacy from some of the main streets. Talk about doing it in phases, is in 25% or 50% of it. And as we're talking about, you know, Trustee Smith, we're saying, can we revise some of these things? Is there a way to do a partial reimbursement, you know, and do this in pieces? So let's say you're entitled to $4,000, maybe you do 50% of your property now for $2,000 reimbursement. And therefore you feel like you want to participate and that you're not going to be, again, struggling for privacy or adjustment or whatever that might be. Secondly, there are some people that are willing to do some of the work on their own. And we know that they might be just small areas, but we want to encourage residents to kind of keep after this buckthorn. You know, so people are maybe cutting this down and then leaving it on the property, and, you know, they would normally burn it, but we can't because many of the residences are no longer allowed to burn because of that ordinance. And we thought about, could we do a pickup? Like, could LRS have one of those trucks? But we found out those trucks are too large to come down some of our small private streets. Could we work out something where we take a section, a neighborhood, streets, and during a particular time, you can bring your chopped, cut down buckthorn to the curb, and we either rent a smaller vehicle, or would it fit in the village's truck, and do a pickup of that buckthorn, bring it to maybe a central site, i.e. perhaps here at Village Hall, and then the LRS larger trucks can come in and haul it away. I mean, it'd be something we'd have to reach out to LRS, see what that price is, but then maybe give residents an opportunity to, you know, do a partial or just at least participate. That's what we've been talking about.
Yes,
You
I've
could
got,
do-
I'm taking notes.
Okay, good.
Are there any questions for our RPC president? Thank you. Thank you for the work you do.
Okay, I'm back. It's Randy Merrill. I'm now a
You're back.
resident.
Okay, all right.
Fine. I don't even
Okay.
think I went through my
Part
3
two,
minutes.
part two.
I'm a resident. I just know you are all kind of considering a change to the lighting ordinance, which is a lot of great factors that are coming up. And I just have a concern that maybe we're being a little too restrictive by saying that some of these lights need to be off by 10 p.m. It seems a little bit early. You know, curfew is 11 or midnight on the weekends. Some homes have a very respectful lighting, you know, pattern. They're not, you know, abusive. They're not shining anybody's windows and such. But overall, landscape and or tree lighting might be the only lighting on their property, rather than little path lights and whatever. So, you know, it's hard to dissect what's landscape, what's tree. But maybe as we start to think about it, be a little bit more lenient and maybe all lights off at 12 instead of 10. Just a thought as you're working through this. Thank you. Now
Thank
I am
you.
done.
Is there anybody else who has anything they wish to address the board? Okay. On to new business. First item of new business is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a TIF note respecting the Deerfield Road redevelopment project area in the village of Riverwoods. Will our village attorney please lead us through this? Bye, Hal. Bye, Scotty.
The village transferred 1.1 million to the TIF fund for the Deerfield Road TIF, which is TIF number 2, to enable that fund to pay all the various costs that we have in front of us. While I mentioned earlier that the county would be reimbursing us for the detention, there's still a number of costs that are village costs in connection with that project. And there'll be other costs in the future as well with any kind of redevelopment of the land that the village still will control over there. Anyway, when we made the transfer, Director Vasquez and I discussed it some time ago how we should document it. In the past, we've done these short-term advances between funds, interfund advances, and eventually the auditors come back to us and say, well, you know, after a year or two, it's not a short-term advance. What is it? And with TIF number 1, many of you weren't here, but at TIF number 1, we created a note between where TIF number 1 promised to pay back the general fund. And over a period of time, it happened when CubeSmart and Thorntons were developed. The revenues that we received from those transactions enabled us to repay the note. I'm not as sure that there will be an identifiable source of repayment for this note, because we took away a lot of assessed value from TIF number 2 when we took down the Federal Life Office building. We removed an improvement. But potential redevelopment of the Colonial Court Shopping Center, and that is the remaining parcel in the TIF, an upgrade to that center could create more increment. Any future development of property in the balance of TIF 1, or if TIF 1 were ever expanded south, for example, the increment in contiguous TIFs can be ported. So there's a possibility. Anyway, Director Vasquez and I felt that to safeguard the ability of the general fund to recoup the monies it was advancing, it would be prudent to have it reflected in the form of a formal note. This is the same format that we used with the earlier TIF1 district. There's a note ordinance that basically there's a lot of words. Normally, you would have a note ordinance where the note is issued to a third party, and so the note ordinance sets forth all the rights and how the note is issued, how it's replaced if it's lost. And, you know, it's easier almost to reuse it than to think about cutting out all these things. But so we have a note ordinance to authorize the note, and we have a form of the note. If you'll notice, I'm on page 60 of the packet. The form of the note is, it has an issuance date for tomorrow, assuming this passes tonight, the mayor signs the note. The maturity date is the last day of the year of the life of the TIF. TIF number 2 has a life of 23 years. It started in 2019. So under the TIF statute, it has a life out to 2042, which means we have, you know, some number of years left in it. I'm just adding, yes, okay. The interest rate is, you know, you have this moment. The interest rate is 4%, which was the same rate that we used in TIF1. The rationale for that is partly just looking at what our portfolio earns. So basically, as this money is used for these purposes, we're foregoing the return that we get, as you just heard from the report about what our portfolio is earning. We also, if you go to, this would be page 65 of the packet. So this is one way of handling this kind of series of disbursements. And this is often done with TIF notes where you're repaying a developer over time. The idea is that we haven't spent the $1.1 million. We transferred it. We made an interfund transfer, but we haven't spent it yet on these costs. So while it's transferred over to the TIF fund, it's still earning the portfolio return. All of our funds are still in a commingled account. It's only when we spend the money that we lose the ability to earn the return. So what we provided in the note is that the 4% would actually only accrue on each disbursement from the date of disbursement when it's dispersed. And the director will keep track of those disbursements when we make, you know, maybe we'll make a payment quarterly or semi-annually, whenever it makes sense to make a disbursement from the fund. And that's how we'll know, you know, really what's been spent and how to accrue interest on it. This is really, we really did quite well on TIF number 1 because the note was paid with interest. We can't say the same thing will happen here, but at least by adopting this ordinance and formalizing the nature of the transfer as a loan to TIF fund number 2, the village will have the ability potentially to recoup those funds. I don't know if Tony wants to add anything to that or not.
No, I think that last line really puts it well. Depending on the increment that's generated, it may ultimately not be able to recoup those funds to the general fund, but by having this note formalized, depending on what happens in TIF2 with an increment that could be generated in the future with future improvements, it gives us the ability to recoup that some, if not all of that 1.1 million in the future.
Trustee Rath, please.
Is there any consequence if that is not recouped by 2042?
If it is not, it just simply means that the general fund will operate without getting those funds back, and we'll kind of, you know, as we budget year to year, we'll be conservative about what we think will happen.
May I have a motion to waive first reading, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Do I have a motion for second reading and approval?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Raff,
Aye.
trustee Smith,
Aye.
trustee Trevino,
Aye.
trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Motion passes. Ordinance 27-07-07.
26.
Oh, I'm sorry, 26-07.
I hate the way time flies by.
Yeah, it just rushes through.
What's right, Mom?
Second order of new business is approval of amendment to the lighting ordinance. This is a first reading only, so we will just discuss this ordinance at this point in time, and it will be on a subsequent agenda as well.
Just look for a motion for first reading, and I can.
Oh, we still need the motion for first reading. Got it. May I have a motion for first reading, please?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. If council would like to lead us through the draft, appreciate it.
I apologize. I meant to have a red line in the packet, but no matter, no mind. I will pull your attention to page 69 of the packet and just discuss the 2 or 3 key changes that we made since the committee of the whole meeting. You'll see subsections 6 and 7, holiday lights and festoon lighting. Do you guys, everyone see that? So I had mentions in this ordinance of temporary lights, holiday lights in different places, and I tried to consolidate them all into 2 places. The National Electric Code, it turns out, does define festoon lighting. It's bulbs suspended between 2 points on a line, on a cable. Holiday lights are really lights that are of a seasonal nature. And so what I tried to suggest without having a specific time frame, because we talked about how that could be difficult, there's different holidays, and having basically to say all holiday lights installed in observance of a holiday shall be taken down within 30 days after the holiday being observed. That's just a suggestion as to how we might deal with it. Then the next sentence, no property owner shall display holiday lights for a longer duration than the safety limitations imposed by the National Electric Code, which for lights that are not intended for permanent outdoor use is 90 days. So 90 days. So we have 2 basic requirements that I hope could work in harmony. One is the holiday's over, it's been 30 days. We can work with that. Another is, well, wait a second. Maybe you're celebrating several holidays, but you're past 90 days. I'm trying to give us, different ways of looking at the problem and the flexibility to let people, observe holidays, not be tripped up by things. Then we suggested that, I'll now tie this to festoon lighting, that festoon lighting will be limited to private patios within enclosed yards. Again, in the experience that I'm familiar with, most of these are in backyards and where people gather with friends, typically on a summer night. If they're not, I think there are some festoon lighting elements that are now manufactured for outdoor use. I did some research. I was waiting for Director Witt to get back and confirm, but I think that it comes in different flavors. So not all festoon lighting is only temporary. So again, I added no property owner shall display festoon lighting for a longer duration than the safety limitations imposed by the National Electric Code. In both cases, I treated holiday lights and festoon lighting the same, which is they shouldn't be operated after midnight. The comment that Randy made about 10 p.m. is that we said that for tree-mounted lights and landscape lights, they should be turned off after 10 p.m. That didn't change. That's still here in the draft. But I want to point out to the board that we didn't put a turn-off time for pathway lighting or driveway lighting. The question, of course, is how do you distinguish what is actually illuminating a driveway, a pathway that someone needs when they come home from the city at midnight, and what is, merely a landscape light? So if you ask me what would be easier to enforce and to understand, I would say all of these lights should go off at midnight. But again, I'm just pointing out, I didn't change those because that was how it was in the draft before. I tried to be sensitive with the case of holiday lights. I doubt very many people run out to turn off their holiday lights at 10 o'clock. Those are the main ways in which we tried to, thread the needle on those issues. I think the rest of the changes are just definitional. These are, obviously, I'm trying to provide the board with alternatives and suggest different ways at recognizing the tension here.
Trustee Clayton, please.
Speaking as a licensed security contractor, I would say that I agree with Randy that the 10 o'clock should be changed to midnight. The objective is to illuminate the building, not the property around the building, because otherwise people go around the building and you can't see them. So I think it's important I think that's an important change, actually.
Are there any other comments at this point? Trustee Raff?
I'd just like to say that I also support that change. I think midnight is a more reasonable hour for terminating lights, both in our neighborhood and throughout the village.
Trustee Trevino, please.
I also agree, and I think the key thing is when you have curfews that end at 12, don't turn the lights off before the kids have to get home.
Good point. Well, as I said, this is only a first reading. Our real technical trustee here on the lighting issue has wanted to participate in the final discussion, and so as a courtesy, as we've always done, we thought we'd go this far just to make sure we're getting some of those edits out to everyone, but we will not move forward with this at this time. Are there any other questions on the lighting ordinance? Comments? Okay,
Excuse me, Mayor Ford, just the only thing I think we should add is I think we should have one of our environmental consultants, whether that's Steve or someone else, take a look at this to make sure that it's ecologically and environmentally sound.
Good.
I would like to request that, excuse me.
Okay. Is there any other comment? Any other suggestion? Okay, thank you. Moving forward, next item in new business, approval of the addition of a position of Public Works and Property Manager in the Building Department. The position description for our Director of Community Services actually has 4 very distinct functions defined: building services, planning and development, public works, and public property management. Public works includes overseeing the road program, water and sewer infrastructure events, those kinds of things. Public property management includes the operations of our village hall, the campus, the play area, the police department, as well as other village-owned land. As we've found, that takes up a lot of time, and our director has been particularly busy. Permits and the developments that are going on, orphans, Nordic Spa, and on and on and on. The need for a new position that would focus and that would focus on those things. We felt that that would probably give us more physical control, somebody who was focused on those particular issues, and perhaps even financial control. Right now, we are employing consultants to oversee a lot of those things. And if we had a village employee out there with, the proper skill set to oversee, that could well save us some money as well. So we went to the Compensation and Benefits Committee and reviewed this and talked at it at length. And we have come up with a position description, which was in your packet. And we asked our Director of Finance how this was going to impact our budget. Not seeing any material impact in 2026, and we should have room in the 2027 budget. So that's kind of the background here, and happy to open it up to questions. And you can certainly, we did ask our, we asked our HR consultant for her response in terms of a position design and the pay range and so forth. We've had many discussions with Trustee Jamerson, who is well acquainted with what's going on in the building department. And again, the Director of Community Service would maintain the control, meaning the oversight over the this position and the function of this position, and certainly would maintain dollar control, if you will, cost estimates and payments and so forth. So did I miss anything, Director Vasquez?
No, I think the motivation was to try to figure out, we went into the budget year when we were budgeting for 26, building in additional funds for additional help in the building departments. And it was a matter of letting Director Witt try to figure out which of his core functions that he oversees made the most sense to find a new person that could do. And this new position was kind of created out of that, targeting those needs.
Are there any questions or comments? May I have a motion for approval, please?
I move to approve the new position of Public Works and Property Manager.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Clayton from the Compensation Benefits Committee, did you wish to add anything?
No, we went through all of the building department functions in quite some detail and tried to really focus on where the skill set of our Director of Community Services is best applied with his architecture background and other of his backgrounds. And this is a structure within the department that should allow us to continue on an ongoing basis relatively routinely rather than always in crisis mode, depending on what the development load is. And these are the things that are the easiest, or easiest, not the right word. These are the things that are most appropriate to hand off into a new position reporting to Steve, so he takes this load off of him and he can use his skill set where it's really appropriate.
Are there any other comments or questions? Trustee Trevino?
I think my only comment would be, I think this seems to go down it seems to go down in the right direction, and would enable Steve to have time to actually think and plan, which when you're as busy as you are, you just have to get the next thing done. So I think it's a positive.
I agree. Trustee Eastman, please.
Yeah, I would just add that, if this allows Steve to focus more on enforcement, which has always been a challenge, right? It seems like this would be a prudent use of resources as well.
Trustee Smith.
I just have kind of one question. Understanding Director Witt's busy, not questioning that at all. I was wondering if we'd given any thought to, is a full-time position the right way to start, or do we start smaller? I don't have an opinion. I'm just asking a question of like maybe a part-time or at least to start and see how it goes. Just a question.
Yeah. Trustee Clayton, go ahead.
When you look at the workload of the Public Works and Property Management, first of all, we're not doing a real good job of managing the assets of the village as it stands today. And also, Public Works is becoming increasingly more and more of a demand on the department because of the water main breakages and other public work kinds of things that are going on. We do outsource some of the inspection things that go on in the department, But I'm convinced personally that going through this in some detail, that it more than justifies a full-time position.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is this a roll call? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much for that. And I'll speak for Director Witt. Thank you very much. Next item of new business is approval of the appointment of Jay Dat to the Plan Commission. Mr. Dat was a member of the commission. He resigned due to family responsibility and has now become available, and we do have an opening. So he has, during his time as a commissioner, he was dedicated and he was reliable. He did his homework and he showed up. So it was really it's a very important addition. His skill set is also something that I think fits very well as an electrical contractor, fits very well on the Plan Commission. So may I have a motion for approval of Jay Dat to reappoint him to the Plan Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Second, please. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Not yet. Approval of the mission statement. And I'm going to ask Trustee Trevino to help lead us through this. There was a need for a mission statement. A committee was formed, and the board had an opportunity to add their comments. And so you see choice here on the agenda, in the packet. But Trustee Trevino, if you could.
Yeah, the first one listed is the original one we submitted. The second one has the suggestions from several members of the trustees, making the language a little stronger. And then for our ecology, really just identifying what it is. So it's not just some ecology, it's the one that is owned by Riverwoods. Any comments?
Any comments, questions? Someone like to make a motion?
Motion to
I'll
approve.
move. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion to approve
Which
the
one?
mission statement,
The second?
the second one,
The second one?
the revised.
The second one.
You were going to say the second one too? The second.
The second one.
May I have a,
Is that
may I
a
have a
fourth?
second? Oh, you seconded the second one. I'm sorry. I wasn't clear. Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Last item, approval of a voluntary leave donation policy. We have a situation with one of our village hall and police department members who has been in an accident, has not been here long enough to get certain benefits. Our sworn officers stepped up and started a donation policy and or donation pool and providing meals and so forth. Come to our attention that maybe a donation policy where people would be allowed to donate time so that the employee who was eligible could be paid for the time away. And I'm being very general here in my statements. If Director Vasquez would like to fill in on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. We reached out to our HR consultant to have her kind of review. There are other villages that have policies like this. Essentially, on a voluntary basis, employees could donate some of their sick and or vacation leave to an employee who was eligible. The HR consultant did make sure that the policy would kind of define what that meant so that you never know what the future might hold, and make sure that it would be for the types of extended leaves that would be kind of appropriate for something like this to be in place. So the policy was drafted by our HR consultant. It was discussed at compensation and benefits, and we came to this final language that was put in here. There is Mayor Ford said, that at times, depending on the situation, you may have something like this where it happens to an employee who is not yet eligible for disability or short-term disability leave through the IMRF pension. This allows the employee to, continue to get paid while they focus on getting better and getting back to work. It also kind of takes out some of those question marks, depending on the amount of leave that is donated in terms of, continuing so that they can continue with their health insurance if they have health insurance through the village, and with their pension if they're eligible for the pension with the village.
Is there a motion from Trustee Clayton?
Just want to point out that other than a small administrative task of kind of keeping track of who's got what in terms of policy, in terms of vacation and so on, there's no impact to the village of this whatsoever. It's simply a program to allow the employees to support each other. And I'm strongly in favor. The police department has been doing this, and it's an excellent program.
Mayor Ford? Yeah, and
Trustee Smith, yes.
thank you. And my experience with friends who are firefighters and police officers, and just my experience in the corporate world, this is certainly not uncommon. I think it's highly encouraged. It builds team strength, builds camaraderie. I don't see any downside to this at all.
Terrific. Any other, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any other comments or questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. There's no further new business. Unfinished business, we still have the annexation sale barn issue on the agenda. It is still being worked on, and we keep it out there just so people know we're still working. Did you have any comments on that? I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to just clarify to the board that based on the vote, we'll incorporate the leave donation policy into the personnel manual, just so it become part of it.
Okay. Board comments? Trustee Raff.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry, Director Witt is not here, but for the last several months, he and I have been in regular communication about repair to the hardscape and landscape in Thorngate following the multiple water main breaks. And when I returned from my vacation, I polled our neighbors and walked with my dog throughout the subdivision. And I was pleased to be able to inform Director Witt last week that all the repairs have been completed, and even with some compliments. So I know he was glad to hear that, and now we can return our attention to why we're having the water main breaks.
There any other comments from any of our trustees? Okay, seeing none, no reason to go into executive session. Next date and time will be Trustee Committee of the Whole meeting on August 4th, starting at 6:30 with the regular board meeting to follow. Do I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.